Oh, hi, I'm the True Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. Card games are a weird thing to talk about when you really think about it, because card games, in video game sense, can be their own thing, but also be a part of a bigger game. And in today's case, we're dealing with the latter, that being Potionomics.
Potionomics was made by Voracious Games, this being actually their first game, and honestly, I hope them the best, as if this is just their start, it makes me really hopeful that they'll make something even better. I honestly don't have much to say then. I only ever remember seeing this game being shown off as, hey, this is coming in the future, and I was like, I want that.
So, let's begin brewing up this review with Potionomics.
The game begins with a few postcards from our uncle, who was a potion maker in the new island Rafta, that was once home to the evil witch Matherin. The island was of her own making, and thus made it to do whatever she wanted. That was until the Heroes Guild came in and basically took over the island from her, with her disappearing into the void, for now anyway. In any case, that doesn't really matter for now, as we actually later learn that her uncle is now pronounced dead, but did leave the shop behind for her niece, who also became a potion maker so that she can live her dream. However, there's more to it than that as we pull away from that as we meet Sylvia, our main character, reading the will as we find out that the shop is actually near the point of breaking down and, well, nothing described like how we thought it would be. And while we're here on this particular screen for a moment, I kind of want to talk about something that I'm pretty sure no one has ever talked about. Now, to be clear, I don't think it's bad. In fact, I think it looks very nice. I'm just more of the question of why are there like 5 different styles in this game alone? Though I say 5, it's actually more like 3 to 4. I'll try to explain. You have the art for the cover, or the banner for the game since this is PC only for a while, which is good and it really did sell me on the game. However, this is for the banner and nothing much else. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but at the same time it's like, aww. Well, that's not to say that this game's in-game styles are bad. I'm just again confused on why there's so many different ones. Like this one, because it's only ever used for just when you're at the shop and kind of going on the map and seeing little icons for the characters, which I actually really like. It looks very cute. Then you have the ones on the cards, which I'm guessing is more of the template for what the 3D models look like, but at the same time, I still think there's a difference between those type of styles. Though speaking on the 3D models, they look really nice too. I would have been fine with them just keeping it to one of those two styles, but otherwise it's fine. I again just think it looks really nice. And that final one I really wanted to mention was this watercolor look to it all, which is again a really nice one.
The only reason why I mentioned it was because, again, nobody really talked about it, and it's just weird.
In any case, soon enough, a debt collector comes in and says, yeah, your uncle left a lot of debt behind, so pay up. And as you can obviously tell, we can't, and, well, trying to sell something to at least show off that, yeah, we can do this, leaves so much to be desired. However, we still have time to pay her some of the amount in about 10 days. After the debt collector leaves, we meet Oswald. Oh, I'm sorry, but to be frank to you all, you learn about this sort of thing about halfway through. However, I figured it out by day 1 since it was easy enough to tell since they gave enough context clues to give you that idea. In any case, Oswald's like, yeah, sucks doesn't it? And it only ever got this way, as he explains, due to the fierce competition with everyone here, and surviving that is, like, really hard. In fact, the only way he thought he could survive this sort of competition is if he had an edge over everyone. So he decided to one day go to Mavin's castle to see if he could find some magical ingredient that would basically give him that extra edge. However, when he got there, he accidentally activated a trap left there that turned him into what we see now. While he was trying to figure out how to actually change himself back, everyone just thought he died. We actually don't learn this until around the fair competition, and after that we forgive him. But in the beginning, it just explains that there was a lot of debt and there was no possible way to actually do it. Well, possibly there is a way, but I'm not sure if the depths could make it possible, which I would love to see if it is. In any case, Oswald thinks the best way for her to get out of debt is by entering competition about potions. Why is it about potions? I don't know. In any case, it's up to you to make the best potions out there in order to get out of debt.
If you can't tell from the premise, which, well, really? In any case, The game is all about selling potions and making them money. Which, let's actually talk about the loop for a moment. Each, I would say week, but it's not a week. Each 10 days, with the maximum of 50, none of those days are about making potions so that you can, make better potions and also make the potions for the competition. With the final day, on the 10th day, with there being 5 competitions, you have to make the potions and be prepared to, sell them at the competition.
In those 9 days, you gotta sell potions in order to make a profit, so that you can make better potions, thus make the recommended potion. Though to be clear, that is the minimum required potion, which is not told to you. Yes, you can just throw any potion out there, but the game will just disqualify the potion in the round to your foe, which we'll get into in a bit. But how do you make potions? Well, you gotta brew them up first, with ingredients which we'll talk about more in depth in a bit. You see, everything has a sort of cost to them, and each cauldron can only handle so many ingredients and magnemites, which determine what sort of potion it will make. So trying to find a good balance of these can be useful, as it can provide a good bonus if you get the ratio just right or close enough. However, if the ratio is more unstable, it will result in a less than perfect potion. But how does one gain ingredients? Well, there are a few ways, though the most important way to gain some are through the Heroes Guild. Through them, you can hire a hero and then send them out on a journey in an area, where they'll gain materials for you. There is something I do need to complain about, that being about how both unimportant the game makes it, but how really super important it is. Because you see, the tutorial makes this sort of area feel like, yeah, you should do it, but don't feel like you have to do it. Because in the beginning, it doesn't feel like a good venture to do, which, that's what we call some money jokes. Like, for the first part of the competition, yeah, it didn't feel like I really needed to use it. When the second part came around, it's actually where I learned how very, very important it becomes. Because it's the only way to gain good materials and stuff you need to beat the game with. And I really have to blame the beginning because it, again, doesn't make it seem like a worthwhile thing to do, thus why I ignored it for so long. And it's not helped with the other shops kinda mitigating the issue with Baptiste's shop. His shop basically allows you to just gain a certain item, though it's picked at random, which seemed at the moment a better deal at the time. But over time, the shop will still be useful. It won't be as useful as adventuring. There's also Matuk and Saffron's shop, which has items that are very particular to what you need for making potions faster and just, upgrading your shop, which are dead useful. It's thus why I ignored adventuring for so long until halfway through, where I learned that it wasn't the only way to get these materials. And even then, that's not even getting into the bigger issue, is that what you can get from there is entirely random, mostly. It has a list, but it's again, random, unless you get extremely lucky. Sure, there are ways to mitigate this, but again, until later, I saw it as a bad idea. And that's mostly because at the beginning, you're hemorrhaging money just so that you can keep on buying materials so that you can survive. And you really don't want to give them potions, which you can do so that they can survive longer and get through certain obstacles. However, that was eating up my potion money, which just sort of left me in this sort of way that I couldn't really get out of this rut. I mean, later on I did, but that was mostly because I could, rather than I needed to, since my adventure gave me a weird curve. You see, as I mentioned before, the RNG, or the randomness, does really impact the game a lot, since you can only ever mitigate it, and even then, it messes with you in ways that I don't think the devs ever thought about. You see, until the second part of the competition, halfway through it to be clear, I didn't get any ingredients to make potions that require E, which means I was locked out of a good chunk of potions, which made the game harder for me in the middle. It wasn't helped that I was in a very bad spot for the most part, meaning that all my profits were going back into the shop, trying to keep me going for the most part. That was until I got a very high-end E ingredient which boosted my profits that, ironically, allowed me to cruise by the game's difficulty. Sure, the RNG was still a thing, but it was less affecting me now. And heck, by the final part of the competition, I was prepared by day 2, meaning I could have done whatever the heck I wanted and not even need to be by my shop, which is funny in a way. Because you see, at the beginning, the first section with Roxanne, which I've heard online everyone was having a really hard time with her, I ironically had a way too easy of a time. In fact, I won so easily that I did a no contest with one of my potions. And like I mentioned before, after that, I started having issues with the formation of getting those items. But after that, I pretty much breezed by the game. And again, by the end, I was cruising on by because of how the RNG works. Which is weird, because this is the sort of thing that happens to games where RNG is a thing, where the difficulty is random at best and you have not a lot of ways to control it. Ironically, the thing that it reminded me of is another card game, that being Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories, where your experience is entirely reliant on the drops you get since the game doesn't give you that many cards that are actually worth it. Or heck, give you cards that you cannot just win with. Though speaking of the cards, I actually haven't really mentioned them. Well, it's because it's only a part of the game that, while yes, useful, it's only a small part of the game. So let's actually get into that now. So how does this card game work exactly? Well, basically you want to increase the price of the item that's on sale, so that you can gain more money. And through these cards, you're trying to convince them to buy it at that new price, which over time will become either easier or harder, as I'll explain in a bit. In any case, you gain free cards at the beginning of your turn, and you try to increase their interest. However, you can't do this forever. Well, sort of, we'll get into that in a bit. That is mostly because each time you use a card, it will eat up a customer's patience, and they range from low to really high. The goal is very simple. You try to reach the highest possible interest so that they don't leave with nothing. It should be noted and mentioned that the cards you are given at the beginning are mostly subpar and will likely, can't say for certain but based on everything I've ever seen, yeah, you're better off removing all the basic cards at the beginning so that you can actually, use the better card. But how do you get these new cards? Well, that's by actually interacting with the new characters. Yes, like Persona, the game allows you to spend time with these characters, which is ironically the most interesting part, but also the most infuriating part. Let me explain. I like the characters, they all have good design to them, with also a decent story behind them all. All of my issues are mostly about how long it can take. See, before you can learn anything about them, you need to give them gifts in order to rank them up, like Persona. And like Persona, you gain benefits with them, as you increase your friendship with them. For example, Quinn, #bestcharacter don't@me, if you befriend him, he will give you a discount for his shop, which is dead useful as he's the ingredient shopkeeper. And not only that, each time you rank him up, you gain a new card, which is how you gain them. However, this led me to understand something wrong with them, that being certain characters got shafted cards. And sadly, the biggest example of this are all of Luna's cards, since they rely heavily on stress to do anything. I didn't mention stress because, well, it never became an issue for me. In fact, it's kind of a bad mechanic as I went on, because it just punishes you more the more you play badly, which I guess, but it basically keeps punching you in the face. But that's not a good explanation. Let me actually try to explain the mechanic. Basically, the customer will try to sometimes say, "Hey, try to lower the price a bit, man." This will actually stress you out. In theory, the idea is to balance the offense while trying to keep your mental health in check. In theory, it's an interesting idea. In practice, that's not how it ever goes down. See, the game makes it easy, or at least early on, to give you cards that mostly say, "Hey, I'm gonna block that," or even just straight up reduce it. And honestly, you'll be focusing more on defense if anything, because you don't want to be too stressed, as the more stress you get, the more likely you are to draw a stress card that will either increase it or outright give you a debuff that makes it harder to rebound. Because at the end of the day, it's mostly a lose more mechanic that just hurts you more the more you increase it, which results in you having to take time away just to recoup, which just eats up more time. More on that in a bit. Which I just never did. In all honesty, if it ever got too high, I just reset and do it over. Though this is again pretty weird, because ironically the more I played, the more it never became a problem for me. Which is again just how weird the RNG in this game is. I know we got off track, but let's actually go back to the cards and actually praise them, because there actually are some cool elements about them. You see, besides Luna cards, everyone else's cards are fine for the most part. Sure, a little situational, but otherwise still useful. But really the best element about these cards is both how narratively and mechanically awesome they are. Yeah, just looking at these cards, you can just instantly tell all about the characters without even knowing anything about them. Like Baptiste, he's an aristocrat that's all about being suave and getting around certain issues. While Saffron is all about chilling out and getting with the vibes, relaxing, dealing with that stress. Roxanne is all about being a demon lady using her charms to make sure you don't notice some of those, what we like to call issues with the potions. Yeah, issues. Let's get into that with the ingredients again. You see, certain ingredients can come with a problem or an actual cool thing that will either increase or decrease a potion's price. However, it never really hindered me, so I entirely ignored it. Thus, Roxanne's shop was very useless to me. That also means I didn't do potion orders because, honestly, I couldn't find the special traits and trying to mix them up, making it really hard and bloody worthless in the end. But anyway, back to Roxanne's shop. Her shop was all about, again, negating some of those bad features. And again, I never did it, so it was kind of like a pointless shop. Which also happened to Luna, where her thing was more about marketing and getting certain advantages as long as you use certain things. Which, again, never fit with what I was doing at the time, so it just never seemed useful.
To note, I don't hate Luna, I just hate how her shop is entirely worthless.
And to go back to the cards again, I haven't even mentioned the more broke cards that are outright better than most cards, like Saffron has a card that gives interest based on Haggler's Patience, which means it's broken for tournament rounds since the judge has a lot, and I mean a lot, of patience, since you kinda need them because they're the more harder, difficult modes, which can actually just straight up win. Or at the very least get you that closer to victory. Or heck, there are just cards that are just better than the cards you're given at the beginning, like Quinn's Press the Attack, that allows you to draw and raise your interest. Or Corcus cards that just allow you to have a passive bonus through haggling. Or Baptiste cards again that allow for more time, that's again, dead useful. I really would have loved to experiment with the cards a bit more because it was really fun. However, that leads me back to the biggest complaint that the game everyone has for this game, which I agree with to a certain extent. That being the limited amount of time with the characters. As far as I'm aware, it's mostly impossible to befriend them all fully by the end, unless you get super lucky, since it is by far the most annoying aspect about the game. And there's honestly a simple fix for it all. But let's actually get into that mechanic for a moment. See, if you want to learn more about the characters, you need to spend time with them, with there being 6 time slots and 2 of them taking up if you want to join and hang out with a character. However, like I mentioned before, the RNG can mess with you very early on, thus it's kinda hard to determine when is a good time to spend time with them. The game makes it seem possible as there is a trophy out there for maxing out 10 characters, which is impressive, but it is hard to do because, again, the amount of time you are given is just not enough for most players. That and also the amount of time just needed to be able to rank them up, since it requires you to do it like Persona and give them stuff so it can be able to rank up, which you can't tell how far you are until it either ranks up and tells you there, or you go back to your deck builder where you can tell for some reason. I don't know why it doesn't tell you automatically, but whatever. And going back to the time slot, since I forgot to mention this in my entire script for some reason, the game also has little mini events that basically can affect potion sales. It's not that important, but it's like, there, we have it out there now. In any case, speaking of shops, opening up your shop eats up 2 of those slots, which I just mentioned before, with 6, and I would say reduce it to 1, and have it at the maximum amount of time you can open your shop a day it's free, to allow a player to have more room to get with the characters. Though this is weird because there is an item that could help, but they are giving it so late in game that you wonder for the most part why it wasn't given to you near the beginning at least. That is the vending machine, so players can sell stuff while out, which again, in hindsight, I should have used it for what it is, but I again was having a weird time with the game, so I didn't think of it at the moment. But even with that, you're still spending way too much time trying to build it up, so honestly, I would have either straight up removed the required friendship stat, or just let us progress it easily, or just dramatically cut it down so it's not spammable. I mean, like, I shouldn't have to go through that much effort just to see more of a character that I like, which the game prevents for no good reason. I can only assume it's like this is so that it prevents players from getting the best cards early on, but they could just restrict it until a certain story point, thus allowing players to still be able to increase their rank without eating into their own time. Because again, I know most players do not want to deal with that hassle. Though speaking of hassle, there is something I really didn't want to mention. And that being how unorganized this game is. What I mean is that the game doesn't really clearly make things very simple to understand. Like, for example, I want to organize my potions, but you can't do that for some reason. I don't know why you can't, because I think that would be the best thing. Or heck, maybe you want to organize your ingredients, which is by far the most annoying thing, because I want to find something in particular, and instead of allowing me to organize by type, instead it just throws them in there. And it's really frustrating and by far the worst aspect of the game. Because all it is just making me go through menus that I've already seen and trying to find the one particular thing I want.
At the end of the day, with everything I just said, you would think I wouldn't like the game, but on contrary, it's just that those elements got in the way of me fully enjoying the game. It was more like annoying things you notice on retrospective rather than something you notice while you're playing, because while you're playing, it's really fun and engaging. I just hope that these elements get ironed out with the patches that they are constantly making, which I'm really glad about. Next time, we're going to talk about a little, well,